Hey everyone, it's Dave, and today I'm just going to be doing a little voiceover explaining my process here, using a little bit of leftovers from stream the other night. First and foremost, if you're watching this on the Valentine's Day weekend, happy Valentine's Day. If not, just realize that I made this painting as part of the Patreon rewards during the Valentine's Day. I'm showing off some magic cards there that I'd pulled the night prior. But yeah, we started off with this little sketch here, and it's going to be two zombies in love. So I just have a very basic, super rough sketch. I was using a little bit of reference for this, but I didn't have a ton. So a lot of this is just coming out of imagination, and it's just me chit-chatting with chat on stream. Please join me, twitch.tv/Dave Hollandard. Of course, that information will be in the description below. But yeah, so I'm just figuring out basically what I want to do with this piece. I know I wanted to have the two zombies holding each other, being romantic. Originally the thought was to have her hand on his forearm, but I felt like the angle just didn't. It would have been a detail that would have not really paid off. So I started with that in mind, but it definitely gets lost along the way. And it's something that I definitely will say that should definitely, I keep saying definitely, that will happen in your work quite often, is where you'll have an idea that changes as you work. So don't be afraid if your concept doesn't pan out the way you thought. So here I am throwing in the basic lighting scheme that I had imagined, which is to have this heart-shaped light covering, master of subtlety here. And yeah, so I'm just laying in the basic lighting scheme. Sometimes I find, here I'm with the highlights, sometimes I find that this really helps speed up the process, because I like to make the light the main storyteller, the main character in my paintings. I don't worry so much about some of the finer details until much later on. I want the entirety of the light to tell the story, because after all, painting is just how you describe the way light works on objects and subjects and whatnot. So I might as well get that storytelling piece done first. That way I can focus on the details without worrying too much about how everything's going to be lit or framed. Because the way I look at it is a well-detailed painting that doesn't have the lighting done good enough, it's a lot of detail that's been wasted, and I don't want that to be the case for my work. So that's just the way that I like to work. I like to work with the lighting in mind first. So I've done a little bit of a highlight. Now I'm kind of working on the silhouette and the shape, because even if you have really intelligent or well thought out lighting, if the forms don't read well, even at a small scale, then you're gonna have a lot of problems. And so not wanting to have super hard black shadows, here I am kind of giving the shadowed area a little bit of light, because even though there's a hard cast light on them, which will make those cast shadows and whatnot in the background, there will be light on the other side. It'll be bounce light, or maybe even like a rim light or something like that, but there will be light on the other side. And I want to make sure that I don't go too far into black. Here I'm talking about my hat. I was wearing a different hat than usual, and it has a little bit of a floppiness to it. So you can kind of see me goofing around. I have a really fun time in chat, and I hope you guys join me there. So here I am noodling around with like the ears and the small details around the face and whatnot. Sometimes I like to do early successes, so I like to get some stuff rendered out early on, and not rendered out very much, just a little bit, because it feels good to to get those early definitions. It kind of helps keep me going without getting too frustrated or too lost in what I'm doing. I can just kind of get something that feels nice and it keeps me going. Plus, when I'm streaming, it's nice to show some kind of detail, some real movement in the work, because when I'm streaming, I am still trying to entertain what audience I have, and I want to make sure that they're not feeling like there's not much going on. Because sometimes you can work on details and they're very subtle changes in value, especially in faces. You don't want to have these humongous swings in value in areas that are lit, because the forms just don't do that too much, and it can sometimes look like nothing's happening until towards the very end. So here I am deciding how much of her face I want buried into his chest and what kind of shapes I want out of her face. I was debating on whether I would make her completely like more savage or feral and her trying to chew on him, or it'd be a little bit more sweet and she's still a zombie, and though her life has ended, her love hasn't. And I didn't really know which way I wanted to go with that. It's funny if you watch my face while I'm trying to talk, because it's sped up like 500%. It looks like I'm chewing on something. And so I'm probably addressing a few things with some people. Sometimes it does happen where I get messages in the middle of stream and I need to address them. Or actually, you know, I think I know what I was doing. I think I was pulling up some reference on something. So yeah, here I am. I'm chatting with Twitch. I really enjoy streaming a lot. It's a lot of fun. I really like it when you guys show up and just hang out. It really makes the work kind of go by. And these times with pandemics and whatnot, and occasionally you'll see like the emotes flying across the screen. But yeah, with the pandemic and everything, it's easy to feel very isolated and alone. So it's really nice to have chat there, because you know it's everyone's really friendly. So here I am kind of balancing out the value. I think right here I'm kind of explaining my process to somebody. And so at this point here, like I feel really good about one thing in particular, is actually his collar. I'm feeling a little cocky about that collar because I got that nice little curl and fold, and I feel like it's really helped kind of add a little bit of extra motion and dynamism to the image that it needed. So like there's that. So now I'm going into her hair, trying to figure out like how I want the interaction between his head and her face and things like that. And I think at this point here I'm also learning that like the shape of her face is really long. It's not doing what it needs to do. It starts to feel a little inhuman. And so my first instinct was to make his head bigger, which it did need to be a little bit bigger. Just looking at the proportion to his neck, and so yeah, you can see right there I'm fixing her face because the angle just makes it way too long. It's okay for it to be a little long because her mouth is open, so it's going to lengthen the face a little bit, but the proportions just weren't quite right. And even though I wanted this to be kind of comical and have a little bit of like wacky fun proportions and whatnot, it needed some help. So now I'm starting to get more of the definition of the outlines. And so right here is an important step. See like how the shadow is in like a really like dark gray and not, it's a really cool like dark, well I guess it's kind of warmer gray, but it chills out the the harshness of the black that was there before, but you still get a much better overall read of the picture. That's something that I definitely want to help more artists understand, is that, like, you really don't want to go into like black unless there's absolutely no light escaping, and that just doesn't happen a whole lot. Even when there's just a little tiny bit of light, it feels that way because our brains want to oversimplify the shapes and the values that we see, but it's rarely ever truly black. So here I am conversing with some people about some stuff. We're probably talking about food. We talk about food a lot on my channel. We debate about very. I'm very grateful of the chat that I have, because we don't really get too heavy. We don't talk about politics or religion or things like that. We like to talk about food, cool stuff in media and science. Dungeons and Dragons, Magic the Gathering, nerdy stuff. Talk about movies from time to time, TV shows occasionally. So yeah, here I'm figuring out like how I want her back to be displayed. And then I'm dropping in my initial colors. So you see how sloppy these colors are? Because I don't care. Like the whole, I'm just going in. I'm going ham because it doesn't matter. And now here's a decision I had to make. I was like, how much like human skin color do I want them to have? Do I want these to be super relatable human colors and they just, they look zombie-ish, or do I want them to be like Incredible Hulk green or blue, or like how undead do I want this to be? And I think I realized that here very shortly that like the human fleshy colors was not a good choice, because it just didn't, as pale as I could make them, it didn't really sell the zombie aspect. They just kind of look like rednecks, just kind of slack-jawed and kind of not healthy, but not zombie. Even though the whiteness of the eyes and stuff, it just wasn't quite zombie. It just looked like really terrible skin painting, and I just didn't feel that what was going on was selling the story enough. And this wasn't a serious painting. This was just for fun. One of my patrons wanted for February some Love Zombies for her made for you painting, and so here I am trying to get some like the veininess and the textures, and I'm realizing very quickly that like these need to be more than just pale. Like they need to be kind of more greenish, and like the tones need to really emphasize how not human they are anymore. So you see I'm going in the more saturated areas, I'm going a lot more green. And I was very proud of myself for doing a character that had like a receding hairline. I wanted it to make sure that it would, because too often artists paint characters that have like these perfect heads of hair, and as a bald person, like I take issue with that. So it was kind of cool to give him a receding hairline, and that wasn't due to his zombie affliction. Like that's just his hairline, and with her, she has just kind of pretty average hair, very thick full head of hair, but it's like like a dyed red. Pretty obviously so. So I want them to feel like just average, regular people, because average people love too. But yeah, at this point here, like I'm starting to feel really, really good about the lighting scheme and the Just the overall feel is starting to really kind of come together for me. And like right here was a turning point. I was like, okay, well that green has to work. That has to be the color. Because like when I looked at her shoulder, and the shoulder, like the very faint light that's on top, when I had like that kind of olive green, I was like, okay, yep, that does it. So here I'm balancing out the light, because the darks are still too dark, and then the colors are not they're not sitting together as well as I'd like. So you can see me doing a color balance and curves, and really just adjusting, trying to point out the areas that need more attention. So here you go, see I'm really digging into the greens and the olive colors, trying to get that zombie green. I don't want to lose their humanity entirely, because I still want them to be like, it's a loving couple, but they just happen to be zombies. So here I'm trying to get some more details in his shirt, get the framing and shaping, just a little bit better there. Starting to realize that I'm about halfway through my stream time here, and it might be time to zoom in just a little bit and get some of these details. And see, like, if you've noticed, like, I really haven't zoomed in at all up until this point. So from a distance, the details are fairly irrelevant, which is the best part. Like, that's the way it should be. Like, you stay zoomed out as long as you can. And if everything looks really good when it's zoomed out, then that's your success. That's your model for success. But if you want to go that extra mile, that's when you zoom in and you start poking at the little details, and you start really starting to refine the finer qualities. And so it just gets better and better and better. So here I'm smoothing out the heart light. I don't know why I was bothering. It was fine. It wasn't great, but it was fine. That was not a detail worth getting into. I think I just wanted to play with the red color for a minute, because I was playing with all the greens and the blues from the shirt for so long. I wanted a different color to play with just for a minute. You have to keep yourself entertained as an artist a lot of times, because especially if you're going for a longer session. Like, this was a pretty short stream, all things considered. I think it was like 3 hours or something like that. But when you start going for the longer sessions, like, if you don't keep yourself entertained, your mind will wander, and you'll start to here I am trying to like focus on like the shadows, trying to make them a little more rich and saturated, just give it a little bit more of that pop. It was fun. But yeah, if you don't keep yourself entertained while you're working, your mind will start to wander, and you'll start to either ignore details or focus on the wrong ones, and just get really inefficient with your time. It's like when you get to like 3 o'clock at a 9-to-5 job, your mind starts to kind of like pace it. Actually, I find it 2 o'clock is the worst for me, like 2:30, because you're kind of in that halfway point between lunch and going home. So it's like you feel like you're stuck right in the middle, and it's never going to end. I find myself to be a little less efficient with my time then. So you got to find ways to entertain yourself with the work you have to do, so that way you can get stuff done and you don't feel bad about it, and you don't feel like you've burned a piece of your soul to do it. So here I am trying to get those really dark areas of the shadows to not be black anymore. Because after a while, like, some artists really relish in dark outlines on things. Like, they really like the line work to show through, but I don't work that way. I don't really do hard outlines too much. Like, occasionally I'll do it just for like as like a choice to frame things but I try to keep it fairly subtle and rare. So like his chin might get like a really super saturated dark green to outline the bottom of his chin, and I probably shouldn't do that as much anymore, but I'll do those kind of things. Or like around the eyes, sometimes I'll do that kind of stuff where I use a really super saturated dark color to frame the eyes out, and I don't feel bad about that one just because perceptually, like, that's the way that we see things, and so I just kind of follow perception as opposed to a literal convention, because I don't really paint in a realism. I paint kind of like in a semi-realism, I guess, where I use realistic approaches towards very stylized things, and I find myself working more towards realism, but most of my inspirations, they don't go full realism. They get close. Like Larry Elmore is one of those painters that, like, he takes a very realistic approach to very stylized things, or maybe he takes a stylized approach to very realistic things, but either way, like, he has that, it's realism, but it's also very fantastical, and just really there's something very fun about it. Like, you know when you look at his work that you're still supposed to have fun with it, and that's kind of like the thing that I want to capture in my work, is that you can find some really badass things, like maybe, you know, cool dragon or skeletons or whatever, but at the same time also, like, the painting has reminded you that you were supposed to have fun with it first, as opposed to going too hard in the seriousness, because I feel like that was always my favorite part as a kid, was when I'd find a painting that, you know, had like a big dragon and it was fighting warriors or whatever, that, like, it let my imagination kind of decide how serious I wanted it to get. There was the balancing between that stuff, and so that was a lot more fun. Maybe that's not the way you want to do your work, but certainly for me, like, I think that's a key element to my current work method. Like, my methodology is to keep a little bit of that fun still in the painting, to let your imagination still fill in some gaps, and it invites you in, but it doesn't tell you how to live your life, you know. I find that to be the way I like to work, although as I improve in my artwork, I find that I'm also still learning more and more about realism and how to get those more realistic approaches. Oh, where did I go? Oh, I think there was somebody at the door or something. No, it was Bullet. Yeah, I gotta get him some treats. So if you guys are ever in chat, you can get some channel points, which are totally free. You just get them for hanging out, and you can redeem them to give my puppy Bullet some treats. He loves them. So I think I was just taking a little tiny break there just to kind of get my bearings. So here I am, kind of getting into the last third of the stream. And again, this one wasn't going to get super rendered out, but I did want to make sure that I got some rendering elements on there that made the piece feel a little bit more finished. The image almost kind of has a little bit of a Dave Raposa vibe to it. Certainly nowhere near the quality of refinement and expertise of Dave Raposa. He's definitely one of those artists that I watch and I try to learn from as much as I can. He's amazing. He absolutely blows my mind every time he does literally anything. His sketches trump my final rendered pieces. I'm so floored by him, so I want to learn more about how he does his work. I know he focuses heavily on line art nowadays, So maybe that's the next evolution for my work, is getting a little bit more in tune with getting really solid line art drawings before getting into paint, but it just doesn't feel as enjoyable for me at the moment. That may change. So here I am kind of refining some of the, so this is what I was talking about earlier, is the values. Like the face doesn't need dramatic value changes all over it. They're going to be very subtle because the planes of the face are not as dramatic as you might think. There's a lot of planes to the face, but they don't fly out all these different crazy ass angles all over the place. The biggest ones you'll notice are like the underneath, so like under the eyelid, like the whole eye socket area has the most dramatic, and then the nose has the second most dramatic. So those are the areas that you'll see like the biggest value changes that happen pretty quickly, is around the eyes and the nose. Even the mouth is not nearly as dramatic. So I'm trying to just kind of dial in those value changes. He has kind of a little bit of a, looks like a Charlie Chaplin / Hitler mustache going on under his nose. I believe I fixed that, so it's not quite so deep, because that little hush mark under the nose, despite the fact that there is a pretty noticeable valley there for most people, it's not going to capture that much shadow. I usually, so like early on, I'll leave that shadow line there because it just helps guide me to the sides of the face around there. It helps guide like where I want the center of the lip and all that kind of stuff. I use it as more of a guidepost, but it is something that I have to try to remind myself that it's there, because oftentimes I'll leave like a little bit of the Hitler mustache in shadow, and I don't mean to. But right now I'm kind of working on the scarring and the vein work and all that kind of stuff on the guy's face as he's kind of rotting. But I think I go back and fix that, the little hush mark, in just a minute. So now I'm doing his knuckles. I'm kind of scanning around, I think, at this point to see what areas I can get some veins in there. Try to add the right proper highlights. Yeah, so here I'm just kind of noodling in to give some more volume to her hair, because it's a Valentine's Day image. What woman doesn't want her hair to look great on Valentine's Day for her love? I gotta make his veins look tip top. Here I am trying to get that ear looking a little better. I probably could have even used to angle it in a little bit more, because now I'm thinking about it, like his ears would stick out pretty good. Of course, I wanted him to look kind of like a doofy dude anyway, just for the fun of it. So his ears sticking out a little bit isn't that big of a deal, but they probably could have been pinned back just a touch more, just a little bit more. At this point, I'm simply just trying to get these like final details in before the end of stream, because we're getting towards the end of it right here. Sometimes these little touches is what makes the difference. If I've been going for like a full-on render of this image, we're down to like the final details, this would be the start. This would be pretty much like the midway point. This would be the start of where I'm actually rendering things. But I really liked the loose quality of this image. It's one of the things I wanted to preserve, was the kind of chunkier looking brush strokes, and so I didn't want to lose that quality, because I felt it was fun and playful and had a little bit of whimsy and dynamism to it, that when you render things out real sharply, you lose. And so here I am. I'm fixing the shadow under the nose a little bit. I probably could have gone a little further with that, but I wanted to kind of keep a little bit of that looseness and that brushy look to it. I feel that it keeps it fun, keeps it playful and light, especially because the whole image itself needed to be less serious. So yeah, that was simply just a decision on design to keep it light and fun. I certainly could have gone a little bit further in the rendering if I had chosen to do so, but I kind of liked I really like that shadow, that very subtle lift in the value there on the highlight. I love the way that makes that little curve to the shadow. Helps kind of describe the arm and the material of the fabric a little bit more. I really like that. That was a nice little pop that it needed. Here I am trying to make sure that arm doesn't get too dark. I still feel like it is a little bit too dark, no matter what. Even the final image, I felt like it was still a little bit too dark. There's a little bit more cleanup work that could have been done to make it better. I think the saturation could have been done a little bit better to describe the form and the volume of the arm, but again, I just didn't have the time, and given the nature of the image, sometimes you have to make those decisions. You have to say what's important. Like right now, all I can see is that little black line going through the forearm, and I hate it. Hope I fixed that. I don't know. I don't remember if I did, but yeah. Sometimes when you go back and look at your work, all you see is the stuff that you should have done better. And that's fine. That's part of growing as an artist, is learning what you can do next time. I think I spent a good little healthy minute here getting his shirt looking more cloth-like, or at least what I thought was more cloth-like. You can tell, like, this is getting toward the end of the stream because I'm stopping more to chat. I'm exhausted. Just the strain of sitting there. Now, if I was working on this without chat, I probably would have taken a break at this point to get up and walk around, get something to drink, and just kind of get my head together. But when you're streaming, you can't really do that as much. So what I do is I stop to chat with stream. Here I am saving the file, because I was like, oops, I didn't save it yet. It's a power outage away from total disaster. So yeah, here I am showing like the steps to chat. I like to do that towards the end, or sometimes I do it towards the middle as well, but just to kind of go through what all we did. And then I'm doing some final tweaking just to get the colors and curves better. Yeah, I never fixed that little black line on the arm, and I wish I had. So anyway, yeah, so that's the whole image. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to join me on twitch.tv/DaveHollandArt, and check for all my social media and Patreon links in the description below. Thanks for watching. Have a good one.